things we need to talk about. Always things to talk about on You Be the Judge. How you been, Marilyn? Though?
Oh, yes, lots and lots of things to talk about. I have to apologize because we were supposed to have the Montgomery County Executive as our guest.
Yes.
But he said that there was the scheduling conflict, so he will not be able to make it this Wednesday, which is why, as soon as I found out, I thought that it would be good to continue the discussion we had last week about, well, we started having the discussion last week about the movie we watched.
Yeah, but don't
And
talk to
then,
the police.
yes, exactly. And I don't think we're trying to be mean or anything else by saying don't talk to the police. We're just trying to protect your rights, educate you, so that not you, Dr. Dyer, but the audience. We're trying to protect the audience, and sometimes the people were trying to protect our police officers because, based on what we've seen, police officers should not be speaking to police officers if they have any idea that they might be suspected of doing anything.
Well,
Hi, Judge Barber. I see that she's joined us now.
yes. Hi, Judge Claudia Barber. How you been?
Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I thank you for inviting me every week.
I was in Annapolis today. For those of you people watching across the United States and everywhere else, Annapolis is our capital city, and we had a press conference of the things that happened in Ocean City over the weekend, last weekend, of police officer tasing a boy over vaping and then excessive mess kneeing into the side of the body. It was just it's horrific to watch. It's horrific to keep talking about these things
Mhm.
that doesn't seem to resonate with people who are not involved. It's not registering. That's what's so disturbing. I'm not talking about the police officers. I'm not even talking about young black men or young black families. But it's not registering to people this may never happen to, and they just don't care. That bothers me.
Well, it's also a sense of arrogance because it didn't happen to me, and there's also a sense of blame shifting the matter. But the bottom line is that they don't want to get to the root of the problem. And the root of the problem is targeted policing and how they treat the minority community like dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying that because the video is very clear. But the question is, can that police department, maybe they can produce the same video of white um, suspects that they treat the same way.
Right. Right.
Can they do that?
Well, I prefer that they stop doing it to
I agree.
everybody. So
I
I don't want
agree.
them to all of a sudden go out there and do it and say, "See, there's a video of one right here. Are you happy now?"
Because they might just do that.
Period.
They might just do that, but the bottom line is that did you have that many before?
Mhm.
You know, not
I
after, but
actually think it was more.
and
Yeah,
so
because
but the issue has always squarely been in the same position it always has been: systemic racism.
Mhm.
And the fact that you treat and police Black people very, very different
Different.
than you do white people.
Mhm.
If it's not this type of open, overt treatment, it's something else, like the fact that you incarcerate or you charge, you overcharge, you super magnify anything and everything a Black person does, that's, from jaywalking, because the bottom line is that these offenses were supposed to be citation offenses. They were not um, supposed to be elevated to the criminal level.
And and
And
I
so
and I
that's a
think
real
I,
issue.
and I think today I really want to talk about that on You Be the Judge. Is I want to get into the legal issue, because one of the things we can get to the morality issue, we can get to the racial issue. So here's the thing: citation. Explain to us, what a citation is and what it isn't, and how simple it is.
A citation is a civil infraction.
Okay.
That's usually what a citation involves. Now, you do have juvenile citations that are issued to minors, but those records are always kept confidential, unless, of course, the person's charged as an adult. But citations generally are administered as civil matters and not criminal matters.
Okay.
Because once it turns into the criminal realm or is a criminal offense, then a prosecutor is involved and they prosecute cases. A criminal prosecutor, rather, is involved, usually the state's attorney's office. But for civil infractions, they're usually of a nature where a fine is imposed if the person is found guilty of the infraction.
If
Right.
So now when we talk about citations, which is a small infraction, and it doesn't matter what the citation is, what is the use of force have to come in with citations? Now, because doesn't certain things have to meet a use of force issue when it comes to a legal issue?
Well, under the police reform legislation, you're supposed to be meeting the standard of use of force with the amount of force that's involved. So that simply means that if a suspect draws their gun, then yes, you have the right for the obviously the officer must pull their gun,
right,
and respond accordingly. But to the extent that you're dealing with civil infractions, civil infractions are placed, to better conceptualize it, you might as well say you're being fined for jaywalking.
Okay. Right.
Okay, because jaywalking is a civil offense.
Right. And
it just is.
But you shouldn't be shot for jaywalking.
And all that kind of stuff for jaywalking. You're not supposed to.
Right.
You should be.
But you shouldn't be shot or tased for jaywalking.
But
that's the other thing.
Well, I think that what I want to add to this is it's the level of force that's used, not the citation or the criminal offense itself. Because you could go in there and try to arrest somebody for quadruple homicide, but they come peacefully, in which case no use of force is necessary.
Okay.
Or you might go in there and, somebody, I was watching a video earlier on in the year where this deputy sheriff was trying to get this man to come in. And the deputy had his weapon pointed at the gentleman, but the gentleman came coming at him with a wooden stick.
Okay.
So the deputy would move back and the gentleman would move forward. The deputy would move back and the gentleman would move forward until the deputy backed into what I presume was his car. So he had no place else left to go. And I think had he waited for the gentleman to hit him again, the gentleman would probably have bashed his head in. In that situation, even though probably that gentleman would have been given a civil citation, but because of the level of force that he used, it seems like the deputy was, and used proper procedure by, unfortunately, killing him. Sometimes you can't help it. So it's not, what the police officer is there for. It's
right.
But watching the video, and maybe we should show the video because some people might not know what we're talking about. So maybe we should show the video and then discuss it. Do you have a way of doing that?
I do. I gotta figure out in my head where it's at on.
Well, then you continue talking. I will look for it. And
okay.
But Dr. Dyer, at the press conference, there were a lot of speakers, were there not?
Yeah, they were.
Was it well attended?
It was well intended. It was very good. Well, it was very well intended, which is neat, but it was very well intended also by the media. The media asked several questions that was quite disturbing. Do you believe that these were the issues of children not behaving themselves? So again, it's not what the police officers did with the the horrendous act. Is those kids should just listen. Uh, it's so disturbing still to hear people who are of white America who are trying to have a conversation in this and still seem like they're slighting the issue of abuse.
Well, no, they don't want to see the issue of abuse. They don't even want to get there. All they see is, and see, again, this also deals with some of the issues that we address in our equity in media, the whole reason why the committee or work group was formed. And that is the fact that when the media asks questions, listen to the questions that they're asking you. And are they placed in a fair posture, so that people aren't, well, why are you going in that direction? And I've seen reporters do that consistently. What kind of question is that when you start focusing on were they misbehaving? Well, what happened to the police misconduct? That's
Right.
that's not even in the question.
I think Marilyn has it up. I'm going to go and go grab it. Let's see. Share. Here shows.
Now to those disturbing altercations in Ocean City, Maryland. The police department there reviewing its use of force policies for confrontations caught on camera over alleged vaping violations. We want to warn you, these videos are difficult to watch. Kenneth Moulton is in Ocean City for us. Good morning, Kenneth.
Good morning, Robin. A ticket and a fine up to $100. That's what you could get for smoking or vaping on this Ocean City boardwalk. But that's not what happened to several young men who believe they were targeted because they're Black. This morning, this disturbing video sparking outrage. Police in Maryland repeatedly kneed a man stopped for allegedly vaping in a prohibited area. And now the Pennsylvania man arrested on Ocean City's boardwalk speaking out. Officers say they warned 19-year-old Brian Anderson and his friends that vaping and smoking are not allowed outside designated areas. But police say Anderson continued vaping, became disorderly, and resisted arrest. That repeated kneeing angered people on that busy boardwalk. Police calling the crowd aggressive and hostile.
So we were just scared at the time, like we didn't know what else to do. We were trying our best to help him in any way.
After scuffling with an officer, one of Anderson's friends says he was tased. Police say Jatique Lewis threw an officer's bike.
And I get a bike thrown at me. So I grabbed the bike and threw it to the side. Next thing I know, a police officer had came and just pushed us, and then we just started scuffling.
Ocean City Police telling ABC News, while the use of force is never the intended outcome, our police department's first priority is to protect and serve. They do not target based on race or age. But this is not the first time tensions have escalated over vaping on the boardwalk. Just days earlier, this video showing 18-year-old Tazeer Griffin putting his hands up before being tased. Ocean City Police say when Griffin was told to stop vaping, he threatened to kill officers.
He was not resisting. He was not giving any issues to the police officers.
His mother grateful the situation didn't escalate further.
When your child's in a situation that you have no control over and you don't know what's going to happen, you flash into these news broadcasts of things that have happened. And I was just praying to God that it did not get to that point.
All those young men facing various charges, the mayor of this city releasing a statement saying he understands the public's concern and police internal affairs is investigating both incidents. Robin?
Still looking into it.
Well,
I think that a lot of the police handling of this situation reminds me of a case in which I represented a client many, many years ago. In fact, maybe it may have been 1 or 2 decades ago, where a police officer made a false arrest and made allegations in a written statement that were not true, just to effectuate the arrest. And that's the problem that you have when you don't have body cameras, which is why body cameras were a part of the police reform legislation and during this most recent General Assembly. It is critically important to have body cameras so that it's not a he said, she said, but at the same time, you don't have this huge discrepancy in a report that doesn't match up with the video. So that's the reason why it was added on that body cameras should be a part of the police force by 2025. There's nothing unreasonable about that. But the thing is that in that tasing incident, that last incident where the teenager had his hands up and he was tased, and then they're sitting up there saying that it was because he threatened to kill. See, I didn't see that part on the tape at all. Maybe it happened. I didn't see it. I just didn't see it at all.
We know that's a training issue. We know across us country, there are certain police officers who would never have done what they did because they are better trained. They're either more professionally across the board. That is a huge issue we are having because you can talk to police officers. We know, I know, you all know, and they were like, "That's just deplorable. That is horrible. That should have never happened. I would have never done that." But yeah.
Dr. Dyer, in our meeting that we had with our media task force or work group, there were police officers, retired police officers there that were present. And they clearly said that this happens all over the country.
Yes.
All over the place. So this is not an isolated incident. This is the common course of conduct in various jurisdictions. In fact, when I was looking at some of the Tulsa massacre documentary series, one of the former police chiefs of Tulsa candidly admitted that he knows for a fact that they treat the Black neighborhood differently than they do the white neighborhood. It's a different policing altogether. And America knows this too. They know now this police chief that's a retired, he's going on the record saying that there is a huge discrepancy. That's the disparate treatment that should be addressed. Not going off on who, on a tangent on something that's not addressing the disparate treatment of people of color. That's the root of the problem. Are you going to make the same arrest? Bottom line is that you have drug activity in white neighborhoods, just like you have it in Black neighborhoods. So how's it all the Black neighborhoods are being incarcerated, but the white neighborhoods, you got diversion programs and you got opiate, measures that you're taking to try to keep someone alive without arresting them by giving them some type of narcon product that will save their lives without making an arrest. There's a huge difference.
Is there a lawsuit coming?
We don't know.
No, I mean, if would you bring a lawsuit?
Lawsuit on what? You mean the Ocean City incident?
Yes. Would you bring a lawsuit on this particular thing? Because if it's happening all across the country, are there lawsuits that we could just say, all right, we're just going to start suing? But we as people, I know I can afford an attorney. I can ask Marylin to sue the Ocean City Police Department on my behalf because my son just had this happen to. I don't have the money.
But you know what? You raise a very interesting point, which we can dialogue, and perhaps this might go somewhere. It took a mountain to pass the police reform legislation that came through the General Assembly. It was fiercely fought.
It was.
You know, and we came back with something. It wasn't everything we wanted that, you know, that the lawmakers wanted, but we came back with something. But we need to move in a direction where we propose class action litigation against disparate treatment from communities and demonstrate that, you know, there's a disparity in how people are being treated in these various neighborhoods, and allow such legislation to go forward so that there can be some type of compensation or some type of solution for people who are and a deterrence for law enforcement who believe that they have the absolute right to treat Black neighborhoods different than white neighborhoods. And see, to me, that's the root of the problem.
Yeah, I think the class action lawsuit is a very good idea, but I think just as important is to have these people have a financial stake in it. Because until they have a financial stake, I don't see anything changing, class action lawsuit or not. Meaning that if this happens and the city pays, you know, it's the insurance company that's paying, it's the taxpayers that's paying, the people go back to their jobs, and sometimes they even get promoted. So they, and when they are given leave, they're given leave with pay. So it really doesn't affect them financially. If we could hold them responsible financially, if they say, hey, you know, I'm on camera, I'm doing this, maybe I shouldn't be doing it because I might end up having to pay for it. I think that would also have a very big effect in lowering these things and protecting some of the people out there who need to be protected.
Great point.
Yeah,
Oh, hello.
okay. I
Good
can't tell.
evening, everyone.
Go
Good
ahead.
evening, Joni. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I was just taken by your discussion on the disparity of treatment between between officers of Black people and of white people. A perfect example of that would be the onslaught of the mob on the Capitol in January 6th. Everyone says that if it were a Black Lives Matter assault on the Capitol, there would have been a lot more injuries and deaths. Now, there are people who justify the action of this mob, which resulted in the death of a policeman, and they justify the actions of these people. Instead of calling them a mob as they were, they call them protesters who were disgruntled because they had certain issues. So that is very blatant, to disregard the injury and death of a policeman at the hands of that mob and call it them disgruntled and not
That's, you know, Joni, you raise an excellent question, because this is all about controlling the narrative. Because when they tell their story, they're protesters, okay? They're not criminals. They're not people who broke the law and there was a breaking in and entering of an area that was restricted. They were just protesters. You know, you see how they decriminalize themselves and control the narrative by choosing the language.
Sure. Absolutely.
And what's scary about Joni, if you want to bring up something, is that not one person at the January 6th got tased.
Really?
I didn't see one.
Not one person.
Not one.
But if you're
that would have easily caused a lot of them to not enter that place if they saw a taser gun.
But if you're vaping on Ocean City, not the Capitol, you can get tased. It's a whole new commercial.
There were pictures of protesters being injured and being helped by the police away from the area.
Mhm.
One person was pepper sprayed, and she was helped down the steps by an officer. You know,
Now, you remember the one person who was shot and killed, who previously lived in Maryland, and I think she was a former military. I understand her family did file a lawsuit, because the officer, whoever shot and killed her, that officer was not held, responsible for or accountable. Well, I mean, to the extent that he was resolved of any questioning as to misconduct. But see, her family is right at it by filing a lawsuit trying to get damages for, and she was the one that was
Right.
approaching a restricted building.
Right. Well, all of that was organized from on high. And I'm sure you probably heard the head of the National Guard testify that he had his men on the bus ready to go and defend the Capitol, but the Pentagon would not allow him to do it. So
See, that needs to be investigated, and people
Yeah.
need to be charged for that.
yeah,
That is of such a criminal nature.
it
You know,
is.
to-
I mean,
to
it
hold
was
that-
a terrorist attack.
It was literally a terrorist attack.
But even the people who were cowering under their desks when it was happening are now making excuses for them.
They
Oh,
are.
why do we need to have an investigation?
Right.
Right.
We're okay.
Yeah.
No, they were protesters. They had a right. Yeah, it's
They don't want you to get
how.
deep into the nitty gritty.
Mhm.
They don't want you to get under the hood and tell the whole story, because it's going to link them. They're going to connect dots, and it's going to link it to them. So they're not, they're like, oh, let's shut this down.
Right, because
And
the
the nitty
terrorists do it.
gritty, I'm sorry, the nitty gritty is who allowed them access to the Capitol for the tours
Right.
a few days before.
Right.
No,
They said, oh, I'm sorry, Joni, go ahead.
no, that's okay. No, that's the nitty gritty. I love that expression. The
Yeah, me
nitty-gritty.
too. Yeah, they said that Virginia Clarence Thomas's wife, was paying for buses.
She
Well,
was, yeah.
busloads
Yeah,
of people
that's
to
what I
come
was-
in. Yeah, so what was she
understood.
thinking was going to happen with, all this that was going on? So a lot of people would have to be investigated. And they don't want that. They're like, look, there's nothing to see here. Go ahead, move on.
Well, they're rewriting history the way they've always done throughout history.
Yes. And that's another thing with the critical race theory coming
Yeah.
all the way up into the forefront. They're telling us, there are a lot of states that are trying to close that down and shut that down,
Yeah.
because it
And
exposes
find
the
teachers to
country
do
for
it.
wrong,
Well,
for the wrong that they've done,
They
and
say-
have always done.
they have actually put out this as critical race theory teaching is socialistic.
Oh yeah, and there's someone
Yeah.
wrote an editorial that flat out called it Marxist.
Marxist. Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Stronger
Yeah,
words.
straight up.
Yeah.
Straight up.
It's-
Straight up Marxist.
Yeah, tell the truth is Marxist.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
So
Wow.
I was thinking after the press conference that we had in Annapolis, and then that was with the Caucus of African American Leadership here in Maryland. And we're talking about uniting people us together to talk about this issue that is happening in our state, Ocean City, and across the country that needs to be addressed. The address has something to do with are these people going to be accountable for it? And is it going to change? Because if the same people are in office, if the same people cover the mayor, if the same people are in leadership, it just continues to do the same thing for the last 40, 50 years. So
Well, see, that's where we have to rise up. We have to seriously look at putting in different people in office. Who's going to fire the police chief for that?
well,
You can't do that.
well, who's voting for the police chief in Ocean City or any other chief? Because
It's the mayor.
thank you.
Well, you vote for the mayor, who then hires the police chief. So
Right.
if you're the mayor, you could say, hey, It's not working out because what the coach of what was it, the Washington football team, he was just let go today, right?
On the basketball.
Oh, the basketball? Okay,
Yeah.
wrong game. Yeah, and why? Because they don't, well, the owner doesn't like what he's doing, so it's like, hey, you gotta go. The same way that we could then get rid of the police chief if the police chief isn't doing what he or she is doing. I know I've said this before, but I am still so upset over it because I think, George Floyd's death could have been prevented if the supervisor who was in charge of Chauvin said, hey, you have all these complaints against you. I'm not putting you on the street anymore. So we have to go higher than the police officer. We have to go to the supervisor and go higher than that. Why didn't his supervisor look at this and say, hey, we have somebody in our force who has a really high rate, or I'm hoping it's a high rate, who knows, who has a really high rate of complaints in the neighborhood. Does this person need to be retrained? Does this person need to be moved from where he's at? But none of that was done.
Well, I'm a little bit concerned about people who often move to the retraining idea because they've been trained.
Yes.
They know right from wrong.
Right.
They've been trained.
Yeah.
They know how to de-escalate and they know how to escalate.
It's
And-
not about
so
training. It's
I
about
agree with you on that one, and it is the accountability factor that we really need to work on now.
yeah, it's their attitude.
Yeah, exactly. There are lots of people who were protesters who say they're going to run for office. So hopefully,
Good.
good. Hopefully we could then have people who say, hey, this is just not acceptable.
But see, we've got to galvanize the community
That's
to do that. They
Yes.
have to, it's not a difficult task to run. I mean, well, granted, elections can be challenging in and of themselves. But what I'm trying to get to is the criteria to run for office. That's a low bar in many, many, many offices, because our governor is not a lawyer at all, and for many governors that were behind him, some of them had no more than a bachelor's degree, if that, so it doesn't, you don't even need that to run for many political offices.
Yeah, I don't even think you need a high school diploma. I think it just talks about age and residency.
Right.
But you do need a support, and he have obviously more corporate support because corporations put more money in elections than people.
Yeah, well,
Yes,
his
they
father was
do.
the county executive, so that really helped.
Well,
And a congressman. Yeah, his father was a congressman and a county executive.
but that's relevant in terms of garnering support. But at the same time, when it comes to qualifications, there were plenty of people who ran for office, for that same office, who had greater credentials, and maybe they didn't run at the same time, but to the extent that people want to try to push a candidate out of office by saying they're not qualified, that's a myth, that needs to be debunked.
As you know, most of you guys know, I'm a neuroscience guy. I'm a brain guy. I do all this science thing. I'm now convinced that certain criteria needs to be tested for police officers to be put in certain neighborhoods and put monitors on them to see how their heart reacts prior to being on the force. Like, I'm thinking of my hometown, New York, put them in the South Bronx, put some heart monitors on them, and just have them sit there for 2 hours. And I'm talking to not as a police officer, as a total civilian, tell them to go get a cup of coffee at 9 p.m. in South Bronx, right? Or and just see how their heart races. If their heart races above this level, you're not cut out for this. You know what I mean? I don't know. I just, what do you got? It's an idea, because they did it to black people when they said we couldn't fly airplanes. They did it to black people when they said we couldn't work certain types of machinery. So they had all these tests and all these anthropological tests saying that blacks didn't have the brain the brain capacity to do certain things. Well, that was proven wrong. So maybe we need to go and test them.
Well, we need to debunk the myth. There are situations where work groups can be established in municipalities that focus on who is being hired as a police officer. And people can be advocates for causing or creating change in that area alone. I mean, are we looking deeply at their social media pages? Enough at their social media pages to see who we're hiring. Because we don't want to learn this stuff after the fact. We want to know before we say yes. And keep in mind that in many law enforcement and municipalities, they often have collective bargaining agreements that will guarantee them a pension if they make 20 years on the force. And most of them strive to do that. That's okay. But at the same time, these work groups should also be looking at what are these supervisors and managers telling the lower rank police force to do. Are you encouraging them to make quotas in your arrests?
I think that's a leadership issue. I think we need to
That is.
Yeah, and it goes back to what Marylin said. It's accountability. How do we hold these people accountable? Like if your child does something, the parents are held accountable. So if your officer does something, yes, the officer is held accountable, and I think leadership should be held on the same accountable. Just like Chauvin's leadership, we should be hold them accountable for him to still be where he is. He shouldn't be the only one in jail. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I mean, I'm a little bit leery as to how that Capitol Police Chief resigned just like that.
All of a sudden,
got pension probably and everything. And then we're left wondering, how did this happen? Why wasn't the National Guard brought in sooner? You told, Speaker Pelosi, and you also told Congressman Maxine Waters that everybody, that everything was fine and the security was intact and everything was under control. And then there's no explanation for that.
None. And no one's asked. Again, another media narrative corrected. It has been hushed. It hasn't been talked about. It hasn't been written about. So don't give me all these newspapers talking about we're for you. They're not. They're not. If it's not for these type of shows, these podcasts, and us talking about it, it doesn't get brought up again, not on social media or not in newspapers, unless we bring it up.
And that's a concern. Now, I've seen some very interesting articles in the Post, and the more and more, you keep seeing all these videos that no one has seen before surface, but it was a lot of trauma in that January 6th insurrection. There were people that got COVID as a result of that January 6th insurrection. And it was just mayhem all over the place. And nobody's held accountable for urinating on and defecating all the marble and the beautiful structure that's inside that Capitol.
Well, it's only the black people got cleaned up. Those are most people cleaned up anyway. That's the scary part. It's the Capitol. That's the cleaning crew. I don't see too many white faces on the cleaning crew. That's all I got to tell you. I just don't.
But somebody had to clean it up.
Yeah, and
nobody's held accountable for that. In a real situation, somebody should send them a bill.
I want to bring up a horrific idea in my head, or a thought. If that was black protesting, and we know they would have all been shot, what would be the difference now?
Well, if it were black protesters,
and they all got killed, a lot of people got killed.
As many of them as, number one, they would have been arrested on the spot. They would not have been going home. None of that. And the second thing is that they more than likely would have been charged with conspiracy to commit murder. Okay. And any police officer
And
died.
treason.
And treason.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Treason.
Which is
Easy-
punishable by death.
Easy charge,
And
easy.
I think a lot would have been shot. Now, with that
Yes.
being on national TV, do you think it would have helped to understand the difference, or it just been same old, same old? What do you think
It would have been a different coverage.
Okay.
Well, first of all, I don't think it would have happened to begin with, because I remember Mayor Bowser saying days, beforehand, we need to have more police officers. We need to have more police officers. And, at a certain point, I was like, why does she keep saying that? And then on January 6th, I saw why she kept saying that. And don't forget, even during the insurrection, when, for instance, Governor Hogan was volunteering National Guard troops for Maryland, he still was not getting a response, and he could not send them in there. So there's all of that. That's why they don't want it to be investigated, because there'd be too many heads, on the chopping block if it were investigated.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's even deeper than that. I think more higher ups would be implicated.
Mhm.
And there's just no way you can justify acquittal of the president under these types of circumstances.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So
And I wouldn't put it past him to have wanted something to happen to the vice president, just so he could get some sympathy vote. Because the fact that the vice president was right there and everybody knew where he was, and still you're not calling in reinforcement, it's just,
Well, they brought the
I
girl
don't know
out
how
there
they
to hang him.
yeah, exactly. I don't know how the vice president could still talk, well, the former vice president could still talk to the former president.
So
Because,
you
hey,
think
I had my life on the line over here, and you didn't even, throw me a lifesaver.
He encouraged it. That's what he happened.
Yeah, because Pence was stuck in there. I mean, that is still a breach of our own government. I mean,
Exactly.
Pence
Treason all the way around.
all the way through. It's
Which is why, if we may turn a little bit, which is why we need to know what our rights are.
Okay.
Because we could keep talking about these things, but I think it's really important that we know what our rights are, and we're encouraged to tell other people, so that way they can in turn protect their rights. I'm not saying that.
Well, the whole concept of what your rights are, I'm just going to go out there and be blunt, as I always have been, by the way, as I many times am. There's a black answer, then there's a white answer. I'm just going to say it like it is, because there are certain things. For example, I know my rights to the extent that a police officer just can't walk up to me and demand to search my purse. Okay, but at the same time, I know for a fact that you have to be gentle and diplomatic when you speak to a police officer.
Like gentler and more diplomatic.
And diplomatic about it. But at the same time, for example, if I'm going into a store, I don't carry things in my purse that have tags on them. I don't want to be confused at any time for any reason with as being accused of shoplifting, because I'm here to tell you, when you go into stores, they secretly record Black people's motions in the store all the time, and they do it at a greater rate than they do white customers in the same store.
I was having this conversation with another woman, and we were talking about when we go to a store, we sort of like look with our hands behind our back. You sort of like put your hands back there, and you sort of like, oh, this is interesting. Still sort of like, see, I'm not touching anything. If somebody moved it later on, it wasn't me.
It wasn't me.
And to have that special precaution, every time you go someplace, it is really exhausting.
I know a food store, for example, whenever I walk into the food store, if I am, they have cameras, but you can also see when they start the recording button, because at the bottom it says record. And every time I am in the aisle, that record button is on. Every time I am coming close to that camera, that record button is on.
And it doesn't matter if you're a judge, it just matters that
You're,
No,
you're just a
you-
black face. It's just the
Yeah.
fact that if you're a black face and you're walking in the store and you're grocery shopping, but
Mhm.
they want to keep a sharp eye to see what you're going to do because they have some suspicion in their head that you cannot be trusted. That's the bottom line. And that's how they police at the same
And
time.
you know what's interesting? They said that the people who steal the most are young white girls and white women with baby carriages. And I thought that was really interesting because those people, like
They
you
steal
said,
too. They steal
yeah.
too.
Yeah, well, yeah, but they don't get that special look. They
That
don't get
over
second look.
zealous, close scrutiny and microscopic examination
Mhm.
of every move they make in the store.
Yes.
And I have a question. How often have you been in that store so that they eventually know that you did not steal and will
It doesn't
not
matter.
turn on that recording?
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter because I shop, I have to grocery shop and they serve good food. So I go to this grocery store at least once a week.
Well,
What-
for how
what-
many, for a long time, and yet they
Yes.
still turn on
It
the
doesn't
And they
recording.
still turn on the camera. They still turn on the camera.
So well, let's.
Yes.
See, I'm the sort of person, I wouldn't go. I mean, I haven't shopped at Walmart for, 13 years. You know, so my money, I know they're losing so much business, they're going bankrupt because I'm not shopping there. I'm kidding, because they're the number one selling whatever in the world. But I just refused to do it because I had an experiment, I had an experience where they, said that I was returning a Game Boy that was used, and the warranty that I had, it wouldn't honor it. And I said, you know what, I'm not, I'm not giving you any more of my money. And that's what I do. I think and I've been trying to get people to just choose 1 or 2 days and to just boycott. And I think a lot of things will change if all of us get together one day and we say, you know what, we're not buying anything from any of you anymore until things change, because
Well, you know what?
America recognizes the color green more than it recognizes anything else.
You raise an interesting point, and I'd like to add to that we as consumers can be more intentional in our habits and in our buying practices. For example, if you walked into a doctor's office or a law firm and every employee you see is white, you can walk right on out that office and say, no, thank you.
Mhm.
We should be that intentional. You know, I actually went to a health provider, a weight loss health provider, and at this Odenton facility, I just straight up asked, where your black people? Where's your minorities? Because I'm not going to sit here and give you business like that.
No.
And you got some kind of segregated workforce going on. I ain't crazy. I see.
But I agree.
We should be intentional.
You should be intentional. If we're not intentional, because they're very intentional in what we do.
They do.
So
they want your money.
Yeah, they sure want your money. So when it comes to rights, I'm going to go back to the Ocean City issue and ask a legal question. Many people on the beach come from the water to the Broadwalk. Not often do you have your ID. How can you answer that? I don't have my ID. Do you say it's over my where my beach is? Where is it? It's down the beach. I mean, how do we get out of that situation?
Well, that's a problematic situation, and I'll tell you why. I don't believe that the laws require you, especially if you're not driving, to carry your ID with you at all times. I don't believe there's a law that says that.
Right.
Okay, so
Yeah,
we didn't know that.
As a matter of fact, the booklet that we attached from the ACLU said that, you're not required to carry an ID with you. And if you don't have one on you, even if you ask, you could just say, I don't have one on me. Because you're not, like you said, if you're not a suspect for something, why should somebody want to just walk up to you and ask you for your ID? I wish I had audio on this, because Roland Martin played a video yesterday that I thought was really, really interesting. I don't know if you guys had a chance to watch it. It was this, it seems like this package delivery person who was in his truck doing his thing when this guy came and asked him, for his name. And he's like, why are you asking me for my name? Well, you're in the neighborhood. So therefore I want to know your name. And what went on after that, you know what? I would just put the link on there because I think it's worth seeing. Yeah. But if the know your rights attachment that we have is full of really, really good information, really good information about what to do if you stop and what your rights are. And yes, I understand that there's some people, it sounds like animal farming. It's like some people have more rights than others. But it's worth at least knowing what you should expect.
So when
I have a question.
yes.
When is a gentle no? When does that become resistance? Resisting arrest.
It depends. Joni,
Mhm.
I really want to say this with deep compassion and passion.
Mhm.
There is no gentle no for a Black person. And that, as sad as that is, there is no gentle no for a Black person. There's definitely not a gentle no for a Black male. There's definitely a gentle no for a Black male who's my height, 6'3", well in shape, 280 pounds. There is no gentle no. So now I'm stuck. How do I respond? Do I respond the white way or do I respond the right way? Because they're not the same. That's the answer.
Great point. Great point.
Could you give me an example? Could you give me an example?
Well, let me see if I could give you an example, Joni. Now you know we're not talking about all white people because you know us better than that.
Right.
But
Absolutely.
I know I went to Howard, and going to Howard, they said that you've got to be beyond reproach because whatever it is that they could, whatever it is that they could use to, I guess, bring you down a notch, they will. And that's really what it is. It's that constant vigilance of, I just can't be myself. I just can't be me because people would just want to come and mess around with me. And since I'm talking about it, it's a 12-minute video, but I just put the link into the chat. I think it's worth watching. Just so we could see. If only we could watch maybe the first 3 minutes because it's really, really interesting. And Dr. Dyer, if you don't mind, we could zoom to the part where Roland Martin is speaking and just get to the part where the man is outside.
Okay.
You see the link?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, because I really think it's interesting.
You want to support
because
Roland Martin? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. Only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keeps it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered.
He's just somebody in the neighborhood. Yeah, so you can stop right there.
Get out of my way. Who are those addresses? Don't worry about what the fuck I'm doing. Get out of my face.
Oh,
Every time I come around here, motherfuckers like you make my job harder. Please get out of my face, dude.
But you haven't identified yourself.
Okay, so he's in his truck and this guy just comes up to him and asks him what his name is.
No, you ain't saying nothing. You ain't saying nothing. Don't worry about who I am.
Can you guys hear?
Where are the boxes?
You really gonna
Dr.
do this?
Dyer, is it
What's
possible
your
to
name?
put up the
I'll see some
volume?
identification. What's your name? What's your address?
The volume is up. You can't hear it?
No, I've got
Not
my
really.
yeah, I've got my volume almost set.
I can hear.
I can't hear it.
Because he asked, what's his name? I heard
Okay,
that.
okay.
Pull it out. Come on. You live right there, right? Let's go over there and see what your address is. Since you got something to say about it. Right? That's what you want to do? You want to ask for identification?
You're the one in the neighborhood.
Yeah, that's right. So what? It's a free fucking country, ain't it? You did this. Don't start shaking and crying. What's your name? What's your name,
John.
buddy?
John.
John what?
That's all you get.
John what? John what? You come over here asking for identification? John what? I don't give a fuck. Fuck you and your missing packages. You think I'm crying over that shit? John what? You want to ask for identification? Where's your fucking identification? It's a free fucking country, ain't it?
Yeah, so you see how the man walks up to him and asks him for his ID, and he's like, I
Don't
don't have
start
to give you
shaking
an
it,
ID, and then when he asks the man, well, what is your name? Well, I don't have to give
What's
you
your name?
my name, and then
What's your name,
finally
buddy?
he says,
John.
well,
John
my
what?
name is John. Well,
That's
what's
all
your
you
last
get.
name?
John what?
Well, that's all you get.
John what? You come over
And
here asking for
it's
identification?
the entitlement.
John what? I don't give a
and
fuck. Fuck you and your
Since
missing
the
packages.
link is in the chat,
You think
I urge you to watch the whole 12 minutes because it is really, really eye-opening. That because the delivery man talks about how, you know, this is what has been happening to him. He's trying to do his job. They tell him to go out and get a job, and he's trying to do his job. Yet, you know, he constantly gets asked these questions by these people because they don't think he belongs in the neighborhood that he is at.
And the fact that they believe that they have the nerve and the right
To ask.
to ask those questions.
Mhm.
And they're not even a police officer.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And to take his picture. There has to be something illegal about that.
No, there isn't.
No, it's not.
No.
No?
Well,
I
you're in public, so
Oh.
yeah.
We have so much to do, so much work to do. You Be the Judge is a conversation where we can talk about some legal issues, bring up some current events, and actually talk about the legal side of things. There's more to do, more to talk about. There's always next week. I do want to say this. Be safe, be kind, compassionate, and still be active. Because if you're not, this continues over and over and over. My son's here visiting with me, and we were in the car, and I started tearing up because I said, if we woke up Medgar Evers today and told him what was going on, he would start crying because we have an issue that hasn't been not an issue for 60 years.
Longer than that.
Oh, yes,
Forever.
it's longer. Yeah,
Forever, really.
yeah.
Mhm.
So
It's, you know, it's been a long time.
it's been a long
It's
time.
been a long, long time.
I have
Yeah,
a quick
what-
question, if I may.
Oh, go ahead,
I think
Mr.
somebody said that is a picture or video. Can anybody say